poignant reflection that traces a bar canvas. How can someone be so bad in 2022 is a question that would resonate with millions of youth across the world. Okay, thousands of images go past. Okay, images go past our eyes as they face in the unending television coverage of Russia's assault on Ukraine. In one such images, a BBC reporter asked a Ukrainian girl how old she is and what she is thinking as the boards a train out of queue to ahead of the police border. She is 19-year-old. Okay, she says and wants to retake revenge for that Russian president is going okay to her country. Badla. Then she adds, how can anyone be so bad in 2022? Though it is phrased like a question, it expresses a sense of moral outrage. It also conveys bewilderment, bewilderment of young persons who is about to become a refugee, जो एक रिफ्यूजी बन चुकी थी लगभग. Layers of meaning. Her question reveals a globally shared emotion okay among youth born around the turn of the century. They have every reason to be believe that the world is an interconnected place governed by rules and consensus. They have recently witnessed proof of the word efficiency and interconnectedness in the handling of the COVID-19 crisis. The lethal viruses failed to stop two Olympics from being held. In the first one, Ukraine was won 19 medals, and in the second one, held a few weeks ago, it won a medal. Then the bombs started falling and city streets turned into the rubble. No wonder that 19-year-old girl feel lost. She are very watching devastation in a nation. The girl's question will linger for a while. It has already muted into an allegory with layers of meaning that are hard to disappear. How can this happen in 2022? The ferocity and the scale of the violence are shocking enough. The aggressors resolved to give peace no chance is profoundly depressing. Will witness the helplessness of Myanmar common people over the whole of last year. This time it is Europe's turn to share phrases assiduously promoted by United Nations agencies for decades now sound like stone dry bean ponds. Two of them come to mind with especially hollow effect. These are global citizenship and sustainable development. The pictures of Ukraine under attack show icons of prosperity catching fire, millions leaving homes, their faces looking numb with disbelief. They do not look like refugees from the poorer parts of the world betting at the Mexican or Greek borders. The new that Russia is has put its nuclear system in a state of high alert also jars with received wisdom. The global information system had four decades ago reserved its dire phraseology to Iran, Palestine, Kashmir. Terms like flashpoint and nuclear neighbors were used for territories far away from Europe. Memories of the Bay of the Pigs had faded. At the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Museum being sensitized when I visited in the new city, all its horror inducing imagery had gone. A member of the museum staff explained that the earlier style of display had proved discouraging for tourism. What are the young confront? For us in India, the poignant absurdity of Russia's war in Ukraine is personified by our standard students. The precarious nature of their plight, the precarious nature of their plight, and the marks it will be leave on their future cannot be okay, cannot be imagined. Some people who should know better have been asking how did so many Indian youth end studying in Ukraine. This is not the right to contemplate. Okay, a wide a widening gap in Russia. No matter which nation they belong to, those born after 1995 do have a special problem making sense of Russian invasion of Ukraine. There have been several visual signs of generation gaps in Russian society. For the younger Russians, the Bolshevik Revolution is as distant as the map of the Soviet Union. Unlike many societies, societies that go through sharp turns and historical twists, Russia has had to face the challenges of upgrading its sense of the past. Reforms in curriculum and teacher training sense. Okay, treason is in the beginning of the 1990s have been pursued with a considerable degree of imagination. Ironically, these very reforms have widened the gap between generations. It is perhaps a reflection of this gap that a gigantic effort is being made to reach out to young in order to explain them the reasons. Reasons for the special military action in Ukraine. A vacuum. The burden of history that sits so avocadly on their shoulders cannot be lightened by good education alone. The problem of understanding what they face are quite similar to those encountered in part of the Germany following the removal of the remarkable Berlin Wall. It was a bizarre symbol of war infested history. A 2003 German film, Goodbye Lenin, adroitly captured the difficulties that a senior citizen of the Berlin had maintaining mental balance when the city's division between the eastern and western side of wall and started facing open resistance from the younger citizens. The story revolves around an imaginative disparate attempt to stretch the past into the present. Okay, something like that इज हैपनिंग इन यूक्रेन टुडे, और ऐसा ही कुछ आज यूक्रेन में हो रहा है. बट दिस इज़ नॉट फैंटसी, ये फैंटसी नहीं है. द कंट्री इज फेसिंग नेक्ड वायलेंट एग्रेशन. इट्स ए स्ट्रगल टू सर्वाइव. it shows a terrifying vacuum in the modern world. That it is a moral vacuum is obvious enough, but it is also a vacuum in intelligence. In War and Peace, Tolstoy had said that the need to seek causes has been put into the soul of the man. No cause that Russia can possibly cite today can justify its violent behavior on display. So these are the major complex from here. Revived tax increases. Let's move to another article. Revived tax increases stop out tobacco products use. The government must stop the increasing affordability of tobacco items and also rationalize their taxation under GST. Despite a relatively high degree of social attention and debate spurring on the pace of COVID-19 vaccine development, the novel coronavirus pandemic has continued to remain a serious public health concern worldwide. India is reported to have lost half a million of its people to the pandemic over the past 2 years, another epidemic. But there is a silent killer in our midst that kills an estimated 1.35 million Indians every year. It is the use of tobacco, as a result of which more than 3,500 Indians die every single day, as estimated by the scientific studies. It also comes at a heavy cost and annual economic burden of rupees 1,77,340 crore to the country, or the more than 1% of India's gross domestic produce GDP. Although not a communicable disease like SARS-CoV-2, the tobacco epidemic, as the World Health Organization characterizes it, some definitive solutions that can reduce the death toll. Research from many countries around the world, including India, so that a price increase induces people to quite reduce tobacco use as well as discourage non-users from okay getting into the habit of tobacco. Okay. Nevertheless, ever since the introduction of the GST and Good Services Taxes (GST) legislation 2017, there has been no significant tax increase on any tobacco product, bearing a minor increase in the National Calamity Contingent Duty (NCDD) during the Union Budget 2022 and 2020 and 2021, with the only had the effect of increasing okay cigarette prices by roughly 5%. लॉस्ट अपॉर्चुनिटी, कौन सी अपॉर्चुनिटी को लॉस्ट किया है? इन शॉर्ट, संक्षेप में अगर कहें, देयर हैज़ बीन नो सिग्निफिकेंट टैक्स इंक्रीज ऑन एनी टोबैको प्रोडक्ट फॉर 4 years in a row, which is quite unlike the previous years where the union government and many state governments used to effect regular tax increases on tobacco products. As pre-reviewed studies show, the lack of tax increases over these years has made all tobacco products increasingly more affordable. The Union Budget 2022 and 2023 was an excellent opportunity for the government of India to buck this trend of not affecting a significant prices increase for the longest time in a row, and significantly increases either excise duties or NCCD on the tobacco products. Needless to say, the tobacco industry and the public health community did expect such a move this year when the finance minister began her budget speech. It was interesting to note that the movement of ITC stock was stable in contrast to the most other stock indices, which were generally moving up. Just as the budget speech concluded, and having realized that there was no tax hike proposals whatsoever on any tobacco product, ITC stocks gained by more than 6% and outperformed most other stocks in the next couple of years. The market was just pricing in an unequal, unused negative prospect for the company. The reason is this: despite the claims of a business diversification away from the tobacco business, close to 85% of ITC profits are still derived from its cigarette segment. Okay, while the lack of tax hikes has helped the bottom line of ITC, the budget has dealt a significant blow to tobacco control efforts in India. In particular, the absence of a tax increase on tobacco has the potential to reverse the reduction in tobacco use prevalence that India can saw during the last decades and now push more people into harm's way. It is known that more affordable tobacco products could attract new users, especially among the youth. It would also mean foregone tax revenues for the government, especially at a time when the government of India is looking forward to increasing the shares of public spending on health. In the recent union budget, it has budgeted 22.2% of the total expenditure towards the GST Council should act. The union budget exercise. However, it is not the only opportunity to initiate a tax increase on tobacco products. The Goods and Services Tax Council, could well raise either the GST rate or the compensation cess levied on the tobacco products, especially when the government is looking to rationalize GST rates and increases them for certain items. For example, there is absolutely no public health rational way. Very harmful products such as the BD does not have a cess levied on its under GST, while other tobacco products attract a cess. समझ गए? बीड़ी पर कोई सेस नहीं है. Similarly, there is no rationale why the specific cess applied on cigarettes, which is currently the largest component of overall cigarette taxes, has remained unchanged for 4 years in the face of the increasing inflation. Since a specific cess is applied as a fixed amount per stick of cigarette, increasing inflation will decrease. Okay, so that is the sufficient from here. Debunking the urban myth about the Taj Mahal. There are no historical records to prove that Shah Jahan ordered that the hands of the workers to be chopped off. Okay, a monument of national importance, the Taj Mahal is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. UNESCO describes it as a masterpiece of architectural style in conception, शुरू से ही. Okay, treatment and execution. This 77th This 17th century wonder is again at the center of multiple narratives driven by ideology. In the process, history is being pushed into the shadows. The latest attempt at the building an ideologically driven narrative came against the backdrop of the Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurating the Kashi Vishwanath Temple, Kashi Vishwanath Dham in December 2021. In an appreciable gesture, Mr. Modi showed followers petals on the sanitation workers who work at the Kashi Vishwanath temple to thank them for keeping the temple clean. But this heart-warming gesture, okay, gesture ishara, soon become another reason to criticize the Mughals. Several news channels started comparing Mr. Modi with the Mughal Emperor Shah. Okay, the point hampered. How was that? Unlike the Prime Minister who had sowed flowers petals on sanitation workers, Shah Jahan had chopped off the hands of those who had built the Taj Mahal in their misplaced okay exertions. Some politicians from the ruling establishment okay ruling establishment picked up the threads. The fact remains that it is a well-known urban myth. There is no historical urban myth. There is no historical evidence to prove that the Shah Jahan did this. उसने ऐसा किया. This urban myth goes back to the 1960s, or at least resurfaced around that time, as the controversy has been racked up again. Let's revisit written records or to salvage the truth. Builders of Taj Mahal. The Taj Mahal conceived as a memorial by Shah Jahan for his wife Mumtaz Mahal. UNESCO states that several historical and Quranic inscriptions in the Arabic script have helped us understand how the Taj Mahal was built. My sons कारीगर जो राजगीर होते हैं, स्टोन कटर्स, inlayers, carvers, painters, calligraphers, dome builders, and other artisans were requisitioned from the whole empire, and also from Central Asia and Iran to construct the monument. UNESCO says the Taj Mahal is considered to be the greatest architectural achievement in the whole range of Indo-Islamic architecture. The unique neck of Taj Mahal lie in the some truly remarkable innovations carried out by the horticulture, planners and architects of Shah Jahan. While we cannot discount the skills and craftsmanship of the artisans and workers, it was indeed the expertise and creative capabilities of the architects and planners, including those who from Central Asia and Iran, which give us this marvel. The supervision of the process starting from the ideation stage to the conception and execution stage was entrusted to the Mughal nobles. Account books and Mughal records say, for example, at the Ata Muhammad stone mason was paid rupees 500 a month. Shakir Muhammad from Bukhara received rupees 400, while Muhammad Sajda, a mason from Multan and Chiranjil, a facade worker from Lahore, were paid rupees 590 and 800 a month respectively. Monthly salary थी ये, उस टाइम बहुत होती थी. The normal wage of such workers were about rupees 15 a month, as reflected the period records of the trend workers. समझ गए? 15 रुपये पर month हुआ करती थी. Therefore, it can be safely assumed that the people quoted in the accounts books were team leaders who were responsible for certain works. They were perhaps tasked with engaging local and other workers. These huge sums were okay redistributed among several people. Also, apart from these masters, okay, architects, calligraphers, and organizers feature in historical records. Some of them were or become part of the Mughal nobility. The uniqueness of the monument has been attributed to the calligraphy. We know from historic records that this distinguishing feature in the monument was devised and supervised by okay by a by a novel Amanat Khan. Amanat Khan, okay, by a novel Amanat Khan, who was organically a calligrapher from Siraj in Iran and migrated to the Mughal court with his elder brother Afzal Khan in 1608 Common Era. He began working in the imperial library of Emperor Shah Jahan, while Afzal Khan soon rose to become prime minister of the empire. Amanat Khan was appointed to design the calligraphy on the okay mausoleum in Agra, which came to be known as the Taj Mahal. Impressed with his work, Shah Jahan conferred on him the title of Amanat Khan like an heirloom and Mansab, a land title that ranked with the nobility. Amanat Khan worked on the Taj Mahal for 6 years. The calligraphy माने लिखावट जो होती है, the calligraphy inside the domed hall of the Grand Mausoleum was completed in 1638. However, just when he completed the most important project of his life, a personal tragedy struck him. Afzal Khan died in Lahore. W. E. Wegley, an eminent scholar of Indian and Islamic architect, wrote that the old calligrapher spent his entire income in constructing a memorial for his brother. It is said that Amanat Khan did not return to Iran on the request of his closest friend Ustad Ahmad, who was the chief architect of the Taj Mahal. Okay, Taj Mahal and Ustad Khan and Amanat Khan are the okay were the chief architect of the Taj Mahal. Respected architects, Ustad Ahmad was a respected architect who was equated with the nobility, okay, nobility of the time. Shah Jahan court historians emphasizes his personal involvement in the construction more than any other Mughal emperor. He showed great interest in building new magnificent building. He held daily meeting with his architects and supervisors. The court chronicler Abdul Hamid Lahori wrote that Shah Jahan would make appropriate alterations to whatever the skillful architects and had designed after considerable thought, would ask the architect competent questions. In writings by Lahori's son okay, the chronicler Abdul Hamid Lahori wrote that Shah Jahan would make appropriate alterations to whatever the skillful architect had designed after considerable thought, okay, and would ask the architects competent question. In writings by Lahori son Lutfullah Muhammadiz, two architects are mentioned by name, Ustad Ahmad Lahori and Mr. Abdul Karim. Ustad Ahmad Lahori had led the foundation of the Red Fort in Delhi. Okay, समझ गए. Ustad Ahmad Lahori had led the foundation of the Red Fort in Delhi. Mir Muhammad had been the favorite architect of the previous emperor, okay, Jahangir. Several designers and architects, 37 in all, are mentioned by the name in Mughal history. It is probable that they all worked together to shape the Taj Mahal. They include Islam Afandi, Aka Ismail Khan, who had worked for the Ottomans in Turkey as a designer and builder of the domes. Kazim Khan, a goldsmith from Lahore, who cast the gold final that crowns the dome. Chiranji Lal, a lapidary from Delhi, who was chosen as the chief mosaicist. Amanat Khan, the master calligrapher whose signature is inscribed on the ताज गेटवे. समझ गए? जब भी ताज के गेटवे पे जाओगे तो अमानत खान के सिग्नेचर वहाँ लगे हुए हैं, कभी देखना, जाके ध्यान से नोटिस करना. मोहम्मद हनीफ, मास्टर मैसन राजगीर. मोहम्मद हनीफ, मास्टर मैशन फ्राम दिल्ली, एंड मुकरीमत खान एंड मीर अब्दुल करीम फ्राम सिराज. ओके. चीफ सुपरवाइजर्स एंड एडमिनिस्ट्रेटर्स. While the efforts and hard work of the artisans and workers played a key role in the construction of the monuments, we know that projects of this nature and scale are created by the planners and architects. They were all planner and architects. They were all facilitated and rewarded by the Shah Jahan for giving shape to his passion and vision. The records conclusively show that the rumors about the chopping of hands were just that. Okay, hearsay for leaders to repeat this myth every now and then, only betrayers. Okay, their ignorance and lack of understanding of history. Okay, so this is most information regarding history, Taj Mahal and Mughal architects. This article written by Mr. Salim Beg, who retired as Jammu and Kashmir Director of General Tourism and was a member of National Monuments Authority Heads and Jammu Kashmir chapter of the Indian National Trust for Art and Culture Heritage. Okay, this is most important article, and let's move to another article. China's takeaways from the war. चाइना के क्या टेक अवेज मतलब रिजल्ट आउटपुट. वाइल डेवलपमेंट्स इन यूक्रेन प्रेजेंट सम चैलेंजेस, दे प्रॉमिस मोर पॉजिटिव आउटकम्स फॉर चाइना. ओके. Like India and one expected lines, China also overstand on the US-sponsored United Nations Security Council (UNSC) resolution condemning Russia for the invasion of Ukraine. However, the Chinese reasons for overstanding from voting at the UNSC as well as its gain and expectations from the invasion are the unique to its own situation. In 2014 too, China decided to abstain when the last vote against Russian aggression in Crimea came up vote in the UNSC as did the legitimacy of the Crimean referendum. चाइना ने वहाँ भी लास्ट वोट अपना abstain किया था 2014 में. However, there are far bigger consequences this time since the full-scale invasion in Ukraine. Resistance are leading to more uncertain outcomes. That is why it is important to look. At the China's current strategic calculations. The status question. The first is the question of China's status as a responsible power. This is important for China because this year the Communist Party of China is slated to hold the 20th National Party Congress. Okay, external stability and enabling external environmental and a positive perception and recognition of China's role in the world would help the party at home too. Okay, this is playing out at two levels. One important question that is being asked whether China knew of Russia's plan to invade Ukraine and whether it did not enough to discourage it. Many observers have noted that Russian President Vladimir Putin may have informed Chinese President Jinping of his intentions when they visited Beijing for the opening of the Winter Olympics. समझ गए? अपने इरादों के बारे में जिनपिंग को बता दिया पुतिन ने, ये कहने का मतलब प्रयास किया जा रहा है. मिस्टर जिनपिंग में have suggested that Mr. Putin wait for the Winter Olympics to conclude before recognizing Donetsk and Luhansk and spending defensive forces there, followed by the out invasion. Okay, Chinese officials have denied such talks as being baseless. समझ गए? Chinese officials कहते हैं baseless है, आधारविहीन है. If Mr. Putin had informed, okay, Mr. Jing of the impending actions, China would have expected Russian actions to be limited up to the Donbass region, which includes Donetsk and Luhansk. Moreover, by trying to engage the peace process, China would also like to renewed criticism of its being a selfish power in the last few days. The US media has been trying to argue that US must make China pay for its silence on the bar. China, for its part, has refused to call the Russian actions as an invasion. Recently, okay, and opened publish in the New York Times had alleges that US intelligence had sought China's help in, okay, disguiding Mr. Putin against the invasion. But China underplayed Russia's intentions and brushed those concerns under the carpet. Strategic outcomes, रणनीतिक परिणाम क्या हो सकते हैं? While China may be surprised by the way the invasion has progressed, the bar is not an entirely negative outcome for China as a consequence of this invasion. The best, the best will possibly direct its attention away from China. Thus, China will not remain the principal, okay, villain in the eyes of the liberal world, which it has been since it unilaterally, okay, reconstructing island of the South China Sea, and since reports of human rights violations Jinping have increased. One might also be a reduction in China's wolf warrior diplomacy, okay, and it senses opportunity to mediate and create a state in the settlement process. Second, that Russia is imposing costs on the West by stretching its military budget is also a good thing for China. This will divert Europe's attention to its neighborhood and away from the Indo-Pacific, and possibly, okay, delay its engagement with the Quad meetings. Okay, Beijing also see a pattern in Ukraine engagement with the Europe and fears it repetition in Central Asia, where Russia and Chinese interests converge in keeping democratic interventions away from all the rhetoric of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization mandates of fighting terrorism, extremism, and spiritism. The principal shared concern for China and Russia is that of externally instigated regime changes, which force democratization in Central Asia and destabilize the region. That is why China, okay, while continuing to appeal to Russia to resolve its issues with Ukraine, has been rather stern vis-a-vis US by calling the latter sanctions on Russia and military promises to Ukraine as being akin to adding fuel to the fire. Okay, military and tactically, there is a lot for China to learn from this conflict. समझ गया, सैनिक रूप से और रणनीतिक रूप से चाइना को बहुत कुछ सीखने के लिए यहाँ से है. फॉर वन, द सो काइंड एव एंड escalation matrix used by the Russia could be a, okay, template if China were to consider a military solution in Taiwan or in circumstances where it sees its core interests being violated. China would also be studying Russian posturing and signaling, such as putting the nuclear deterrent forces on high alert, and the responses from the US, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, individual European countries, and the UNSC. This is not to say that China would prioritize a military solution to reunite Taiwan, but every crisis is an opportunity to learn. Okay, this article written by Avinash Ghosle. Okay, Gadbole is an associate professor as assistant dean financial school of, okay, liberal arts and humanities, okay, Jindal University. Let's move to an last article, text and context. The office of the governor. Article 131st of the draft constitution had provided of an elected governor for a governor appointed by the president from a panel of the 4 candidates elected by the legislative assembly after elaborate deliberations, the assembly voted for a nomination provision which rules out any role of the for the legislative assembly. The Sarkaria Commission recommended that appointee should be someone from outside the respective state, so that the he would not have any personal interest to protect. They reiterated that it is better to have a detached figure as governor. The commission condemned the practice of governors venturing further into active politics as well as ascending to other officers after the compulsion of their term. However, conflict still arises when the governors turn vocal in public against elected leaders who respond with equal vehemence, taking the relation to a new law. What is the story so far? Let's go slightly from here. The constitutional debates on the role of the governor and how the position has fared in center-state relations. The makers of the Indian Constitution, the makers of the Constitution of India, did not anticipate that the office of the governor meant to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and the law. Would metamorphose into the most controversial constitutional office, rendering the constitutional praxis are raised. Though the original draft of the Constitution provided for either the direct election or the appointment of the governor, Article 131st of the draft, which was to become Article 155, the Constituent Assembly chose a third alternative for the appointment of the governor by the President, so as to avoid confrontation with the elected executive. Article 131st of the draft constitution had provided for an elected governor or a governor appointed by the president from a panel of 4 candidates elected by the legislative assembly. After elaborate deliberations, the assembly voted for a nomination provision which rules out any nor the legislative assembly. Jawaharlal Nehru also strongly supported a nominated governor, as an elected governor may lead no conflict and waste of energy and money, and also leading to certain disruptive tendency in this big context of an elective governor plus parliamentary system of democracy. Finally, a process by which the governor is nominated by the president on the advice of the council of ministers was adopted. It became the Article 155 of the enacted constitution, when the elected governor of the United States was just opposed with the nominated governor in Canada and Australia. Democratic property demand nomination despite the suspicious reluctance towards the parent law. The Government of India Act 1935, which conceived the nomination system. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar categorically stated on the floor that the governor under the constitution has no functions which he can discharge by himself, no functions at all. While he has no functions, he has certain duties to perform. Instead of a powerful governor, what the constitution conceived was a duty-bound governor, a constitutional prophecy that failed to work after the fourth general elections of 1967, as Congress had to bid farewell to their power in 8 states while retaining the power at the Union, gradually resulting in a tug-of-war between the central assertion and constitutional autonomy. Politics till the Bombay verdict. बहुत ज़्यादा पढ़ने की ज़रूरत नहीं इसको. The rules around the guardianship of minors. How are various government offices changing document procedures when it comes to mirror? What is gist of this article? In 2016, the Military of External Affairs changed its rule for issuing passports. Similarly, in 2018, the Central Board of Direct Taxes amended income tax rules so that the father's name was not mandatory when a mother was a single parent. Under the Hindu Minority and Guardianship Act, the natural guardian of a Hindu minor is the father, and after him the mother. In the Gita, Hariharan versus Reserve Bank of India, the HMGA has challenged for the violating the guarantees of the equality of sexes under the Constitution. Let's move. Getting back home safely. Despite extensive experiences in conducting evacuation operations of its citizens abroad, India still needs to institutionalize best practices. बिल्कुल जरूरी है. What is the story so far? The increasing size and complexity of diaspora requires the government to expand capacity and improve procedures. More than 11 million Indians now reside abroad and 20 million travel internationally every year. The government should have clear that policies on how to approach hostile situations and rescue missions. The government will need to build on its rich experiences in conducting more than 30 evacuation operations since 1950s. Okay, studying India's history, best practices and lessons learned will help institutionalize them and avoid the need to reinvent the wheel every time a crisis erupts. The government must expand efforts to manage public opinion and be able to conduct a quiet diplomacy that is crucial to safely extricate overseas Indians from conflict zones. To reduce domestic pressures, it should embed media representatives more frequently in such missions and reassure the diaspora by ensuring that high level political representatives are personally engaged. Okay, so this concludes for today's Hindu newspaper analysis. So thanks for watching.